I want to get to Cal Perry now. He is in Tornillo, Texas. And for those of you who have been following our coverage, you'll know that Cal has been trying to get into one of these facilities for days now. And Cal, as I understand it, you just ran out. You just stepped out of a tour of the facility there, one of these tent cities. What can you tell us? What did you see?
All right, Greg. So we've just gotten some clarification. I'm sorry, someone's in my ear. We've just come out of our first tour of the Tornillo tent facility, which, of course, has been a lot of attention on this facility. Here's the breakdown of the kids inside. There are 326 children inside that camp right now. 14 are girls. 23 of the kids inside that camp were separated from their families. Here's a breakdown of where they're from. 117 from Honduras, 40 from El Salvador, 162 from Guatemala, 3 from Mexico, and 4 from other countries. We spent 2 hours inside, Craig. We were given a full tour of the facility after a briefing. The headline for me, and Joy's here as well, I think was the emergency manager who works for a company called BCFS said the following to the media. These are direct quotes. Quote, "The shelter would not have been necessary without the separations." Quote, "The crisis was made as a result of the decision to separate the kids." Quote, "Separations should never have happened. The process is flawed," he said, "and it harmed the children." He said that he would like to never do this again. We then toured the facility. There are 22 tents on this facility. 2 are set aside for girls. And there are, how many girls, Joy? I apologize. I'm just going through my notes here.
Small number of girls. I think there were fewer than 15 girls.
14 girls. I apologize. In these tents, Craig, and we saw the kids. The kids are walked around as groups by their tents, so 20 kids at a time. They're led all the time by 2 of the quote-unquote teachers, of the officials. They're wearing sort of yellow T-shirts. They walk these kids around in a line. We were able to only interact on a very basic level with them. Hello, how are you doing? We were told not to interact any further with those kids. They all seemed fairly happy. Going into those tents was pretty emotional. There are drawings of kids that they've done. One said, "I am 100% Honduran, and I walked 10,000 miles to get here." This facility is on a 30-day contract by the U.S. government. That contract began 11 days ago and will end on July the 13th. Throughout the tour, we were accompanied by the spokesperson for HHS. Right. He talked about not knowing whether or not they would extend that contract. It depends on whether or not there's a need. This facility, Craig, is a spillover area. The facility was created because, Joy, they're moving some of the tender-aged children around the country.
Right, and the point was made to us, Craig, that the facility would not have been necessary had they not had to make room for much younger children at these facilities where they're moving kids to around the country. And this is both small unaccompanied kids. We even were told that some children arrived with phone numbers of relatives pinned on them. But the majority of these tender-aged children are unaccompanied because, let's make it very clear, they were separated from their parents. And when they get moved into facilities that are appropriate for a much younger child, then a bed needs to be freed up for them. The facility that we were in was not appropriate for those little kids, so those older kids get moved to a facility like this.
Craig, 26 of the children inside that facility. I'm sorry, Craig, go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you up, but I did just want to let folks know that the images they were seeing at home, those were images that have been provided to us by the government. Those are images from HHS. But go ahead. You were saying something, Cal.
Yeah, 26 of the children in that camp were separated from their families. 3 have already been reunited. Look, the thing that didn't make sense about the visit, and I do want to say that access to this facility has made a great deal of difference. The emergency manager said it was the secrecy about this policy that has caused so much trouble. He's urging, frankly, the government to allow more press access to the facility. The one thing that didn't make sense to me, Joy, is, we talked about how to track down the kids. Right. And the spokesperson for HHS says they know where all the kids are with the families.
Yeah, and it took a long time for us to actually get onto the tour because there were a lot of questions coming from us in the press as to how do you match the right child with the parent. They're saying that each child is given what's called an A number, that this number follows the child throughout the system. What we were told is that even if the parent and the child are physically separated, they have numbers that correspond to one another. They insisted that they know where every child is and that they're making every effort to either reunite the child with their parent or with another relative in the U.S. They say that there's a process that they're trying to get through. One thing that we were told by the HHS spokesperson that I thought was significant was we don't do families. Right. We only deal with children. So we are not clear at all what happens when this policy of child and parent separation becomes a policy of family detention. We don't know whether or not an HHS spokesperson like the one we spoke to today is going to be able to talk to us and tell us what's happening. We don't know if the process is going to change. Those are the questions we couldn't get answered today because, again, this facility is literally only there to deal with 13 to 17-year-old teenagers.
Cal, I know that Joy can't hear me, so can you relay the question? What struck her most about the tour? What struck her most as she was walking through those tents?
Yeah, Craig's asking what struck you the most. Before I get you in there, I'll tell you, the kids playing soccer, these are tough kids. They came tens of thousands of miles. I mean, they're 14 years old, but they look older and tougher. And Craig's asking what struck out to you. What struck out?
As somebody that has, two sons, they really did. It sort of transported me back to when my boys, in particular, were teenagers. At that age, teenage boys don't talk a lot. Right. They're very reserved. A lot of the boys smiled at us. They wanted to say hello. Those who could speak English wanted to speak English with us, wanted to tell us hello. The only questions that we were able to ask them, we couldn't ask them anything about themselves, was how are you doing? How is the food? They were very eager to answer those questions. We saw kids lining up to use the phone facilities to call relatives. We saw kids sort of lined up outside doing their activities, going from activity to activity. And what really, I don't know, there was something about it that had a pathos to it. These are kids who are alone. Because they are teenagers and they're boys and they're all together, they're playing soccer together, they seem to be making friends with one another. A lot of them did smile, but there were some of them who didn't, who just had a sort of a blank expression on their face, who seemed a little bit distant, a little bit vacant. And it had to be strange for them to sort of be gawked at by us. It was a bit uncomfortable to walk through, right? It was sort of like being in almost, we were sort of a spectator looking at them and they were sort of behind the zoo gates in a way.
And
it was uncomfortable.
And we really couldn't communicate who we were and why we were there. And that was uncomfortable. Right. We were given this schedule, and I don't know if you can zoom in. We were given this schedule, and it looks like a schedule that you would see at a daycare center, anywhere else. Outdoor recreation, shower time, lunch time. They're allowed 2 phone calls a week, 10 minutes in length. Somebody is there for that phone call. We were told that was, to make sure that there's no child endangerment issues, not to monitor the phone calls. They were playing soccer, Craig. Apparently that is the thing that they enjoy doing the most. There's a 98-degree cutoff, 98-degree heat index cutoff, where they then will bring them back inside. They are allowing the kids to watch the World Cup live in there. I know at some facilities they don't. Yep. But yeah.
And Craig, can I just say one more thing that struck me, and I'm sure it struck you too, Cal, when we went into the sleeping tents. It's a very militaristic environment, okay? Right. You feel like you're inside of an army barrack.
It feels like a forward operating base in any of these countries.
Absolutely. They're in military-style tents. They're sleeping in these bunk beds where all the beds are perfectly made up. It's very sort of like military camp in a way, but there are these little touches that the kids have put inside of their own tents. These little drawings that are done in crayon and sort of colorful crayon. There was one that was sort of a crucifix with a rose at the top of it. Yeah. There are others that have sort of affirmative, sort of positive sayings. The one that Cal mentioned about how far one young person had come from Honduras. These are sort of ways that these kids are trying to express themselves. That was tough. And we really only were allowed to talk with 2 girls. The girls are very much segregated and separated from the boys. The girls were very reticent. They were very different in a way from the boys, like not
They didn't
talking.
The boys were very kind of eager to wave and thumbs up and talk about the World Cup and what team they were pulling for. And the girls, they came out individually, 2 girls, one at a time, just to sort of let us know that they were okay. It was clear that, again, this dynamic of being sort of leered at, for lack of a better term, was sort of freaking them out.
Yeah, and we were told that when the congressional delegation came through, it did sort of frighten some of the kids being peppered with questions, so they were very restrictive about what we could ask them. And, it's difficult just as a parent to see it.
One of the things that moved me was we were told that the kids, as they leave, as they're transferred to other facilities, they're leaving the very few belongings they have behind for the kids they know that are going to be coming behind them, Craig.
I know that you guys have to get to this sort of briefing that's being offered by Health and Human Services. I'll let you go do that. If there's some news made, do come back. Joy, thanks as always. Cal Perry, a big thanks to you as well.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.